Today's the 9th, 10th. Hey, good morning. It is the 9th of January, 2019. That's right, the 9th of January. You heard it right. You heard it first. The 9th of January. Welcome to my home. Welcome to being face to face with me, Miguel Angelo Trujillo. How are you doing, Emily? Emily Claire McFarlane. So it's 2019, the first week of 2019, and it's just another day. One thing that intrigues me about life is how time is just marches on, second after second after second. Sometimes I feel that time is dragging me along. It's like, oh, it's a new moment. And then, oh, it's a new moment now. And it's a newer moment now. And it's just continual, these continual new moments. I guess that's what life is all about. But, and it's pulling us through time second by second. And, I really get a sense of just how time marches on. It is the change that's continuously happening is just amazing. Of course, my brain adapts to it pretty well. But anyway, so let's see what's going on with me today. Well, this morning I read a wonderful passage in a book that I'm reading about gratitude, and it spoke about finding what's right with the world instead of what's wrong with the world. And this is so important. And, I'm, in a way, it surprises me that even I have not fully recognized how important it is to think about what's right with the world. And there's so much right with the world. I mean, if you think about how improbable human life is on our planet and in the universe, the fact that we're alive at all, that we are here experiencing this moment-to-moment miracle every second of our lives is just amazing. I mean, it's terrifically amazing. I think about the vision that I have, how accurate it is, and how even after 47 years, it's still pretty good. I think about my hearing, which is amazing. And, it's not the best hearing in the world, but it's pretty darn good. It's really good hearing. I can listen to music. I can listen to conversations. I can listen to music videos. I can hear a lot of things around me, and wow, what an amazing thing that is. And then my body, which is made up of what I like to say, a million parts and pieces, or a million parts. And basically those parts are functioning. Every cell is producing protein using DNA. Wow, and RNA. That's amazing. And producing energy through the mitochondria. And, my stomach is functioning, right? It's working. That organ is working. My liver is working. My kidneys are working. My bladder is working. My brain is working. I mean, nearly every cell in my body is working like it ought to be working. Isn't that amazing? I mean, how many chemical reactions are going on right now in my body, in my liver, in my heart, in my brain? I mean, it's astounding. It's astounding, really, to consider just how much is going right every second of our lives. I don't know, I'm blown away by it. And not only that, but there's this history of things going right too. I mean, I just look at my hand, for example. This hand is the product of thousands and thousands of years of evolution, right? Let's look deeper into the hand. I mean, every cell of this hand, the bone cells, the ligament cells, the tendon cells, the skin cells, the blood cells have DNA in them. And that DNA has lasted for millions of years. It's been evolving in this environment on Earth. And, that DNA represents my ancestors, right? As they evolve from various forms. And even the simplest forms from a single cell, from the first viable single cell that replicated. I have DNA that comes from that. In a way, I'm not even sure why people feel that they're lonely, because how can you be lonely just by looking at your hand, recognizing your parents? I've got 50% of my mom's DNA, 50% of my dad's DNA here. And then prior to that, my dad got 50% of his DNA from his dad and 50% of his DNA from his mom. And then his dad, I mean, just from dad to dad, if you want to go that way. You can also go through your mother's line. But these are all people, I mean, just a few generations. I'm talking about 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128 people, just in a few generations. These are people who have thrived and struggled throughout their lives to give me this gift of being alive, my DNA inheritance. And they worked hard in their environment, in their situation, to give me this gift. I mean, I see my grandparents in my hand. And not only that, I see even the earliest humans in my hand. I particularly see, and I've mentioned this before, I've got this image in my mind of ancient people drawing water from a stream using their cupped hands. And I could just imagine, the first cup was probably our hands. And I could imagine people drawing the water up to their mouths using their hands. And the shape of their hands is a cup or a bowl. And to me, that practice has been going on for thousands of years, thousands of generations. And in fact, maybe even the ability of my hands to cup so easily that I have today might have resulted from struggles in the past of, cultures and people cupping water into their hands and drinking it. I mean, to me, I just think of the thousands of generations prior. I mean, all those people are related to you, and every drink that they took made your life possible. I mean, they had relationships in their tribe. They procreated and had children and raised those children with love. There's this whole lineage of love, this lineage of caring people who are your ancestors, who loved you and loved your ancestors and helped them thrive and survive. And I know you love your mother. And it makes sense to love your mother's mother and your father's mother and the mothers to those mothers and the mothers to those mothers. I mean, just think about all the love that you represent, the accumulated love. Can you imagine the accumulated love and the accumulated sacrifice? Those parents of old that have been lost in the mists of history. Many of those parents had to give up their time, their energy, and maybe even their own lives for their children. And you survive as a result. I mean, these are people who gave everything to their children. And I mean, it just chokes me up how, I mean, it's emotional to think about how you've been supported. I mean, not just by me, Emily. I support you financially, I support you emotionally. I'm there to help preserve and protect your life. But I'm just the first in a series, or not even the first, but I'm just the last in the series of thousands and thousands of other fathers. Father of the second generation, father of the third generation, of the, it's just, there's a lot of love and caring there, a lot of benevolence, a lot of compassion, a lot of support. And every time I look at my hand, I think and recognize that support. And it's phenomenal. It's essentially a gift. Anyway, I just want to let you know about that possibility, about how really it is unnecessary for you to feel lonely in the world. If you do feel alone, take a moment to examine your ancestors and the historical past, and recognize the gifts that you receive from even the earliest hominids, right? Australopithecus and um, all those ancient people, how they all contribute to who you are today. And it's their love that they've passed down to you, and they bestowed you this wonderful gift of life. Anyway, there's more that I want to talk about, and that is this idea of finding out or discovering what's right with the world. I think that human beings have a real tendency to focus on what's wrong. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with government? What's wrong with business and finance? What's wrong with the law? What's wrong with the world? The pollution. There are a lot of things wrong with the world. I mean, if you could think about it, there are literally an infinite number of things wrong with the world. An infinite number of things that do not support life, that make it a challenge for us as human beings to live each day, right? There are literally a million things, and I could spend, if I took a second, every next second, and every second I had to come up with, I could have to imagine what's wrong with the world. I could fill up the entire rest of my life writing that list of what's wrong with the world. And I wouldn't be wrong. I wouldn't be mistaken. Every one of those elements, for various reasons, could clearly be what's wrong with the world. And what's wrong with myself. Absolutely. And you know what? I would be right. I would be spot on every time. But as you could probably realize, here's the point, is that there are equally as many things that are right with the world. Absolutely. If there are an infinite number of things wrong with the world, doesn't it make logical sense that there are an infinite things right with the world? Absolutely. Our human brains, they've evolved to focus on what's wrong out of a resource protection, right? We want to protect and preserve our lives, and evolution noticed that this practice that human beings engage in every day of finding out what's wrong with the world helps preserve our lives. It helps us be more fit in the world. The problem with that is that it doesn't necessarily make us happier. It doesn't necessarily make our lives more enjoyable. It keeps us alive. It keeps us wonderfully alive, but we don't enjoy the aliveness. We don't enjoy the gift that we've received. So, from our ancestors. And so, I don't know. I want to emphasize how important it is to figure out what's right with the world. And it might not be entirely obvious. Sometimes bad things happen, and it's not that anything's right with the world, but maybe we've learned something from the bad thing that's happened. Let's say we get cancer. Well, I think we can feel grateful grateful for every moment that we are alive and in a relatively healthy state. That could be with what's right with the world. You might have just stage 3 cancer and not stage 4. That could be what's right with the world. But even beyond that, what you can do is you can think about how your current life situation is teaching you lessons, what you've learned. What I know, one thing that cancer patients learn to do is they learn how to manage the healthcare system. That is, they learn about how to work within the healthcare system and be effective in the healthcare system, or at least more effective in the healthcare system. Uh, you know, if they don't die instantly, they're all learning about the current system. And, that is valuable. They're also developing virtues. Maybe they're developing virtues related to patience, bravery, courage, um, love of life. I think love of life is itself a virtue worth um, growing and fertilizing in your life. So it's not about. So even if a bad thing happens in your external environment, you can still learn. You can ask yourself what you've learned. You can ask yourself what personality strengths you're developing, what virtues you're developing, what values. Just identifying your values. Sometimes getting cancer can help you identify what's important in the world. It can help you identify narratives that relate to meaning, and you can develop more meaning in your life. Maybe you start to cherish your children more or your mate more. And also, you might become a lot more aware of your intentions, right? I know a lot of when bad things happen, that's often a consciousness raising event, right? You become aware of these. You learn, first of all, you learn about what could go wrong, and you learn how to work through the issues created by these external events. You can learn about yourself on a more deep level. You can become more conscious of, say, your behavior in one aspect of your life. Um, there's a lot to be gained, even for a person who has cancer. There's a lot to have learned and to be gained from the experience. And so I think it's important to recognize that. Don't take it for granted that you're learning new things. You may be becoming more effective in the world on account of the fact that you've got cancer. Maybe you recognize your time is limited, and so you're focused on productivity, and you develop new journaling techniques. Or maybe you're focused on self-care, and you develop new skills related to that. Or maybe you reach out socially to friends and family that have been alienated. Now, when it comes to subjective evaluation, one point is, how right is it? How good is it? These are, I don't know. It's not always easy to identify intensity and the level of importance, the significance of the value. And you can play with that. Play with that a little bit. How important is it on a scale from 1 to 10 that's this thing is right with the world? The fact that the sun shines on the earth On a scale from 1 to 10, to me, that sounds really important. The source of all energy on the planet through sunlight and plants making starches and sugars, and essentially being the sun is as necessary for life on this planet. Well, that's an overstatement. I think the first thing that comes to mind is the radioactivity of our Earth, our core, and how there's a lot of geothermal energy underneath there, and there are vents underneath the sea at the seafloor where life can thrive there too. But beyond that, with that exception, that is the exception of the molten core of the Earth, all energy comes from the sun. And so anyway, it's important. It's valuable. All right. So on that note, speaking of science, I figured one thing that might be nice is to go through my geology textbook. And I thought we would read an excerpt about atoms. Now, personally, I love atoms. Everything I love is made of atoms, of course. And I thought that this treatment of atoms was at least intelligent and interesting. And I thought I'd read it. And we could think a little bit about the periodic table of the elements, and we could think about the building blocks of all things in the world. I think it's a story that's been told time and time again since Democritus came up with the idea with the atom, but still, it's a story worth telling. So this is how this textbook tells the story, and we can elaborate on it as we read more. So the title of this section is called Atoms, Building Blocks of Minerals. Compare and contrast the three primary particles contained in atoms. All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. When minerals are carefully examined, even under optical microscopes, the innumerable tiny particles of their internal structures are not visible. Nevertheless, scientists have discovered that all matter, including minerals, is composed of minute building blocks called atoms, the smallest particles that cannot be chemically split. Atoms in turn contain even smaller particles, protons and neutrons, located in a central nucleus that is surrounded by electrons. So the subsection title is called Properties of Protons, Neutrons, and Electrons. Protons and neutrons are very dense particles with almost identical masses. By contrast, electrons have a negligible mass, about 1/2000th that of a proton. To illustrate this difference, assume that on a scale where a proton has the mass of a baseball, an electron has the mass of a single grain of rice. Fascinating. Both protons and electrons share a fundamental property called electrical charge. Protons have an electrical charge of +1, and electrons have a charge of -1. Neutrons, as the name suggests, have no charge. The charges of protons and electrons are equal in magnitude but opposite in polarity. So when these two particles are paired, when these two particles are paired, oh boy. So when these two particles are paired, the charges cancel each other out. Since matter typically contains equal numbers of positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons, some substances are electrically neutral. In illustrations, electrons are sometimes shown orbiting the nucleus in a manner resembling the planets of our solar system orbiting the sun. However, electrons do not actually behave this way. A more realistic depiction shows electrons as a cloud of negative charges surrounding the nucleus. Studies of the arrangements of electrons show that they move about the nucleus in regions called principal shells, each with an associated energy level. In addition, each shell can hold a specific number of electrons, with the outermost shell generally containing valence electrons that interact with other atoms to form chemical bonds. Most of the atoms in the universe, except hydrogen and helium, were created inside massive stars by nuclear fusion and released into interstellar space during hot, fiery supernova explosions. As this ejected material cooled, the newly formed nuclei attracted electrons to complete their atomic structure. At the temperatures found at Earth's surface, all free atoms, those not bonded to other atoms, have a full complement of electrons, one for each proton in the nucleus. Golly, it's beautiful. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, to me, this is poetry in action right here, folks. This is where it's at. This is the Adam and Eve story for a scientist, at least for me. Should we go on? Yes, we should go on. Let's learn more about the elements defined by their number of protons. The simplest atoms have only one proton in their nuclei, whereas others have more than 100. The number of protons in the nucleus of an atom, called the atomic number, determines its chemical nature. All atoms with the same number of protons have the same chemical and physical properties. Together, a group of the same kind of atoms is called an element. There are about 90 naturally occurring elements, and several more have been synthesized in the laboratory. You're probably familiar with the names of many elements, including carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. All carbon atoms have 6 protons, whereas all nitrogen atoms have 7 protons, and all oxygen atoms have 8 protons. Elements are organized so that those with similar properties line up in columns referred to as groups. This arrangement, called the periodic table, is shown in figure 3.5. Each element has been assigned a 1 or 2 letter symbol. The atomic numbers and masses for each element are also known as also shown on the periodic table. Atoms of the naturally occurring elements are the basic building blocks of Earth's minerals. Most elements join with atoms of other elements to form chemical compounds. Therefore, most minerals are chemical compounds composed of atoms of 2 or more elements. These include the minerals quartz, silicon and oxygen, halite, sodium and chloride, and calcite, calcium, carbon, and oxygen. However, a few minerals such as native copper, diamonds, sulfur, and gold are made entirely of atoms of only one element. Okay, I don't know. This is amazing stuff. This is great stuff. This basically helps a person know what minerals are made out of. They're made of elements. Although there are some minerals that are not mixtures of elements, but they are themselves just wholly, entirely atoms of one element. Wow. So you're 14 years old right now, Emily. And the 14th element is silicon. Oh, wow. That is great. I think I'm going to get you silicon. Get you a sample of silicon. Let me tell you, the 14th element is silicon. Oh, man. Silicon is so important in technology today. Now, I am 47 years old. I wonder what the 47th element is. It is Ag, silver. Oh, yeah. Silver. Nice. Sounds like an important element. It totally is. Totally is. So anyway, that is awesome. I mean, what can be better? It is, the story of atoms is kind of like an Adam and Eve story. All right. So let's move on to say our question and answer period. All right. So what is the next question? You know what? I realized a mistake that I had made earlier. In the past, I told you that I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Turns out I'm mistaken. Sorry. I actually wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I know. Maybe I had given some thought to possibly waking up at 4. And because of that, I just started thinking about me waking up at 4. But I really actually only wake up at 4:30 in the morning, which is fine. Okay. So, um, question number 177. How do you feel about your age? Okay. So, how do I feel about my age? So, I'm 47 years old. I was born on May 27th, 1971, which, when I think about it, was a long time ago. I mean, it's already almost 2020. And 71 is like 50 years ago, which is a long time ago. In fact, I'm surprised that I look as good as I look now after even 50 years of being alive. My hair is a little jacked up this morning, though. I could be looking slightly better if my hair would be cooperating. I think that. So, how do I feel about my age? Well, I don't know. It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. Well, first of all, one of the things I'm grateful for is that I'm told from many, many different people that I look young for my age. And I'm so grateful for that. I'd much rather look young for my age than look older than my age, that's for sure. And I think the reason I look younger for my age is just purely genetics. My mom has, she's very beautiful and she's got excellent genes. And, and she's got really healthy genes. And so I think that's pretty much it. Her on my mom's side, she has family members that have lived to like 100 years old and beyond. She's got longevity in her genes. And I'm pretty much certain I get those youthful traits from my mom. Although my dad, he's got some pretty youthful traits too. But I think the me looking younger than I actually am comes from my mom's side. So now, beyond that benefit, that amazing benefit of looking younger than I am, I think partly looking good, and of course being older as only it's only relevant to looks to some extent, and appearance to some extent. But I'll talk about that because it's easiest to talk about. One reason that I do look so young too is that I have been able to maintain my weight. I have a healthy weight range, which is something special. It's something special in the context of our current society, where obesity is such a problem. We've got 40% of adults being obese in the world, or at least in our country and in our state. And that's a lot of people being obese. There's a lot, and what obesity does, of course, is it changes a person's appearance. It often makes them less attractive, and it makes them feel older and look older. And so, thankfully, I've learned enough about my body so that I can maintain my weight. So thankful that is the case. So that is, of course, appearance is just one aspect of age. There are other aspects of age, and that is the performance. Now, the thing is, today I'm in better health than I've been in all periods of my life prior, like during my early 40s and all throughout my 30s and even all throughout my 20s. I am more active and more energetic now than I ever have been in my life. So that's great. And in fact, I'm really sad that it took me so long to get as healthy as I am today. To be all through my 20s, all through my 30s, and almost all through my 40s, basically half of my 40s, just to start hitting the gym. And I always have known that I wanted to do it, but I just found it just too difficult, too challenging. I guess what flipped the switch for me was that I just was in so much pain that I needed to exercise. The pain had to come first before I learned the lessons of the pain. And the lesson that I learned was that the stronger I am, the easier life became. Life is basically easy for me now, more easy than it's ever been, mostly because I'm in such good shape physically. And what's great is that being in good shape physically has concrete effects on how good a shape your mind is in. And so I get that dual benefit through working out and exercising. I get the physical benefits and I get the mental benefits of being less prone to being challenged by stress, things like that. So this all relates to aging. How? Well, I've learned a lot of lessons over the years, and I'm grateful for those lessons. And it turns out that some of my most potent learnings have happened just a few years ago, basically in my early 40s. And those lessons learned have been very valuable. I kind of wish I had learned those lessons in my 20s. But things are good, in terms of age. My body's aging very well. I don't seem to have too many disabilities, mental or physical ones. So I'm glad for that. And I just want to keep that going for as long as I can. Now, what do I think about being 47? In the latter part of my 40s, there's a sadness there. There's a loss, the loss of the time. And I've lost a lot of time, just poor decisions, poor management of energy. And thankfully, now I've done a lot of learning over the years. So getting back to that question about, how do I feel about my age? How do I feel about 47? Well, I am pleased about the maturity and the intelligence, the knowledge, and all the lessons learned that I've gathered and garnered throughout the years. They've been very useful to me. But at the same time, I lament the fact that I am as old as I am, and that I might have only, 30 more years, 33 more years to go. Maybe I'll have 35. Maybe I'll have 40. I mean, I'm a little skeptical that I'll live 40 more years, but I mean, if I can eke out an extra 20 years, that if I can go to up to 70 years old, that'd be amazing. I think I can do better than 70 though. I think I can do 80 years old. So the question is, what am I going to do between now and the next 30 years? I'll just live day by day, moment by moment, and accept whatever I receive from the world. We'll see how things change. Hopefully someone comes up with a an elixir of life that allows for um, longevity into past 100, that would be amazing. I think it's entirely possible, even and especially if we allow like AI, artificial intelligence, to learn about what it takes to for human beings to live longer. I might make it up to my 80s and 90s. I don't think that I'll make it to 100. That sounds a little unrealistic, but it's remotely possible. We'll see what happens. A lot of things will have to come together, like autonomous vehicles will have to be implemented as quickly as possible. I'm pretty sure that if anything is going to affect and impact my life in the future, it's going to be some kind of physical accident, some kind of vehicular accident, whether it's planes, trains, or automobiles, or boats or something. I'm going to crash into something. I think that's what I'm most concerned about. I'm concerned about crashing into stuff. And if I don't crash into stuff in a vehicle, chances are I'll crash into the floor or into a wall by not noticing it when it shows up, and break something that's really important to me, like my femur or my hip or my back or something like that, or my skull. I'm a gentle egg. It needs to be protected by egg crates. Um, so, yeah. So, what do I think about my age? I'm overall, I'm just grateful to have reached an age that is what I call maturity. I think I'm here. Certainly at 50 years old, I'll definitely be mature. And so I'm grateful for all the experiences that I had that sort of have led me to this point in time. And it's true. I do kind of think of my life in terms of the decades, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. It's only 33 or 4 decades long. So let's see, what else? What do I think about my age? Well, age is just a number, but what it does represent is sort of the amount of time and resources I've gobbled up. And, what can I say? All things must come to an end. And I think I'll be sad when my time comes to leave the earth, to leave this universe. And then that's not to say that this universe is all that amazing. I mean, it is amazing, but life still is a struggle, at least for human beings at our stage of development. I mean, we only had the Industrial Revolution pop up about 100, 200 years ago. And I mean, in 200 years, we've made advances that have been remarkable. Advances that the human beings over the last 200,000 years haven't even come close to. And so, I don't know why human development didn't shoot off faster than it did. I certainly wish that this 200 years of development occurred, 10,000 years ago, back during Egyptian times. Why didn't the Egyptians advance culture any more than they did? That was our chance. Those Egyptians, they could have done it. Man, they built those pyramids. They could have mined metal and discovered steel, and they were right there too. They had all the oil resources right under there. They had so many oil resources. I mean, if it's kind of interesting that the cradle of civilization happened on top of all of these oil reserves, boundless oil reserves, and that if they only sought to burn that oil, only discovered what the oil underneath them, what the potential was, For goodness sake, human beings could have advanced so far. Now I'm really beginning to feel this sense of loss, this sense of longing. Like, what happened? The Persians and the Egyptians and between the Tigris and Euphrates River, if only they 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 made the oil catch fire and discovered what that was all about at the cradle of human civilization, then maybe they could have advanced far beyond their wildest dreams. But no. Let's see, when did Saudi Arabia start really digging for oil? I mean, it wasn't until like the 1980s or something like that, right? The 1960s, maybe it was then. It took them, they were basically 10,000 years late. Okay. Why did it take them 10,000 years to catch, to mine for oil? Why? Why? Oh man, why did it take them 10,000 years to do that? No one figured it out? Oh man. That would have been amazing. Imagine steam engines during the Egyptian time. Wow, can you imagine that? Oh man, I just came up with this integration right now. Why didn't the Egyptians set fire to the oil? Why didn't the people between the Tigris and Euphrates set fire to oil? Why? I'm going to go to my grave asking why they didn't do that. Anyway, so beyond that lament, I guess I am pretty satisfied with the way things are. Thankfully, the Industrial Revolution happened at all, and that I sort of at least caught some of it during my time alive. The future is going to be pretty amazing for future civilization. I mean, just in 100 years, I would guess like in 50 years, human beings will find a way to live forever. Oh, well, at least someone will have found a way to do it, even if it won't have happened with me. There are always people who have come before, and I guess I'm just one of those people who've come before. So that's okay. It's just the nature of reality. How can you become overly upset about it? Reality is what it is. You can only do the best you can with the resources you have. And speaking about resources I have, the resources I have right now are all of the book learning in the world ever. All the, I can communicate with anyone on the planet, pretty much anyone on the planet using this device. I can also gain access to all the information in the world, all the data sets in the world that have ever been produced right here on this little machine. I also have artificial intelligence to help me mine it through the use of Google Home voice assistant. And so, and I also have access to all the music that's ever been created all through history in this little device. So, I mean, just look at these two devices. And really, I just need this one device. And it's all here, folks. It's all here. All of man's accomplishments, the pinnacle of human intelligence and development and growth. I have access to all of everything there is to know about everything is right here, folks. So I've got it. I've got all the accumulated knowledge of all the planet, of all the world, and you'd think that would make me infinitely happy. And I am. Seriously, infinitely happy. Am I infinitely happy? I don't know. On a scale from 1 to 10, my happiness level is a 10, related to that one single point. That is that I've got access to all the music and knowledge that the world has ever produced, ever, at my fingertips. Now, the thing about it is there's so much. I mean, how do I process it all? This is why we need artificial intelligence. I need an artificial intelligence assistant to my mind, so I can start reaping all the benefits of all this infrastructure and all that's come before me. So anyway, we'll get there eventually. We're just not quite there yet. And so I am grateful to live in this time of so much potential and creativity, creative energy. It really is magnificent. And really, there is no other word to describe it than magnificent. Yeah. So I am super pleased about that. So, Emily, I hope that, you've learned a lot about me over the last few days and few weeks while I've produced these video programs. And I hope you have a better sense of what's going on in the world, at least from my perspective. I hope you have a better sense of, what my experience has been and what my life is like. I'm sorry I can't elaborate much further on what it's like to be 47 years old. Really, I honestly feel like I'm still 25 or 30 years old. In fact, today I am more fit than I was when I was 25. I'm in better physical health than I was when I was 25. I'm in better mental health than I was when I was 25. I mean, I struggle to imagine how I'm not better than when I was 25. I mean, I'm smarter. I've got more skills. I've got more confidence. I've got more money. I've got more influence. I've got you, my daughter, Emily. I've just got so many things more than I had when I was 25 years old. So, these last few years have been really beneficial to me. And, acquiring all the world's music and all the world's knowledge is no small feat. And then being able to communicate that through video and audio technology, again, is also no small feat. So thankfully, I stand on the shoulders of giants. And one day you will stand on my shoulders. And, what more can a man ask for, really? Except for infinite wealth and infinite lifespan. Infinite strength. What more can a person ask for except for those things, right? So let's see. Let's go on to the next question. And I think we're only going to go on for another 4 minutes now. So what's the next question? Question number 178. Is it more important for you to look good or feel good? Explain. Well, it's definitely more important for me to feel good. Absolutely. Looking good is a bonus. It's a bonus. I'm so glad that I look good. There are a lot of people who are disfigured. They've had injuries to their face, their appearance, and so I'm really grateful for that. I'm also keenly aware that there are many people who are more attractive than me. Good for them. But I'm no slouch. I can hold my own, I think. So that's good. So, but as for whether it's better for me to look good or feel good, it's most definitely better for me to feel good. I mean, there's just no way around it. And looking good is just nice. I'm glad that I can look relatively okay, that I don't look disheveled most of the time. Clearly, I could be looking disheveled most of the time. One of the things that I'm recognizing right now is that it's it's about 7:30 right now here where I am, 7:30 in the morning. And the sky is bright. It's so bright. I can't believe how bright it is. We had our winter solstice way back on December the 21st. And let me tell you this, I am noticing the sky getting brighter. Oh my gosh, it's getting brighter. I'm so pleased. The daylight is getting longer and the sun is beginning to shine out from behind the clouds. And oh, thank goodness. You know, there are times when I wish that I lived at like zero latitude along the equator so that every day would just be as long as every other day. Having these short days, I don't know about it. I think I prefer having the long days of summer around June 21st. I mean, having all that sunlight, I mean, it's such a pleasure to have sunlight all day, every day. And, I'm also looking forward to going to amusement parks this summer, the spring and summer, and also going to a lot of water parks. I'm interested in going to um, Six Flags. What is it? There's a water park that they have there, Hurricane Harbor, and I'm just gonna go crazy for the water sports this summer. I think I'm gonna go stand up paddleboarding. I almost definitely will do that. So totally excited about my future and what I'm looking forward to. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Well, actually, I'm gonna wrap things up. Let me say to you that I love you. I think you're amazing. And even though we're not that close, I am hopeful for the future. I have a sense that even I may not, it may be the case that I don't have a strong influence on your life right now. When you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. But I think that my influence, in our relationship will grow and get stronger. I have really high hopes for the future. As you enter high school and college, I have these dreams of going on vacation with you and traveling the world and going to amusement parks and all the fun that we can have over the next few decades. Well, I'm still strong enough to lift my own body weight around and intelligent enough to remember who I am and what my name is. And so there's a lot out there for us to experience together. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you on a deeper level and just sharing my life with you. And I'm really interested in learning more about what makes you tick and what kind of personality you have, what your sense of humor is like. This is something that's really important for me to discover. And I'm really quite optimistic about the way things will turn out. And I love you very much. And I love you just the way you are. And I hope you have a fantastic day today. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.